Hi guys, Aceface here, back with another video for you, and today this is my first video on the new 7th edition 40k. So I thought I'd get this video out for you nice and quick, just to kind of give my quick review stroke first impressions of the new edition, and particularly the rulebook. So I've just stuck these two in front just so you can look at something else rather than me for a change. And these two are quite poignant, as we will go on talk a little bit later. This is my Bloodthirster conversion and my Demon Prince of Khorne conversion, which you may or may not have seen before. So what we'll do in a second is we will have a little jump in to the rulebook stroke digital rulebook itself. Now I've gone for the digital enhanced all singing all dancing multimedia rulebook, just because for me I really like the fact that it continues to update with any FAQs or changes that GW make. For me that's really handy, because when you're playing in competitions it's nice to know the updated information is right there at your fingertips straight away, rather than have to try and bring copies of FAQs and try and look at them on the day. So it's handy to have. I probably will end up getting the book as well, but I'll probably wait until I can get my hands on a small little one that might come out, one of the starter packs or what have you, at a later date, because I find the big books, as much as they're a nice thing to have and a bit of candy, they are a bit of a pain. They don't tend to end up venturing out of the house much, and they tend to not be my go-to books. So I've gone digital, fully digital this time. So I'm going to cut away and then we'll cut straight back to my iPad and we'll have a little look at the edition. Right guys, so here we are. This is the digital codex, and I apologise for the glare, which you can see me waving in there. I couldn't really find a better lit place to do it, so you have to bear with me, and I probably shouldn't show too many screenshots anyway, because I'll end up getting in trouble. And we don't want that, do we, people? Right, so yeah, so it's quite a flashy layout, really sort of nice slick interface, which is pretty cool. So it's kind of split into 3 books. You have one that's kind of all sort of basic story stroke fluff. Then we have the next bit is kind of, again, more kind of fluff based sort of bits and pieces. You probably find that there are better reviews of these parts out there, but I'm going to kind of scan through them because they're more or less, they're pretty much what we have already seen in the past in prior editions. They're really slickly written, very nice stories and fluff for the 40k, and if you haven't already and you just kind of switching on, this is your first edition, this is really cool, because this is what the game's all about, and that's probably one of the reasons why I'm still so much in love with the game, because it has such a rich history, fluff, storyline, which really kind of makes it enticing to play, for my opinion. But anyway, let's get into the core bit, which is the rules. So you have book 3, which is the rules, okay, and this is split into different subsections. So you have the core rules, you have unit types, you have battlefield terrain, you have preparing for battle, and the appendix. I think, yeah, that's about it. And they're really nicely sort of laid out, so you can just kind of pop onto one and it'll tell you all about movement, whatever. Right, so that's pretty much how that's laid out. Now, without going too much in detail, what you will find, for those of you who have played 40k in 6th edition, actually there isn't many changes. there isn't many changes at all. In fact, if you remember the last change from 5th into 6th, it was quite a new way of playing the game, and a few of the mechanics were added, taken away, changed slightly. This is not the case. This is very much a little bit of a play around with a few weaknesses in the rules, making a few things clearer, adding a few little tidbits here and there, but very much sticking to the core dynamics of 6th edition with a few little exceptions. So the good thing that all you guys out there need to know straight away is you're not going to have to reinvent the wheel on this. If you can play 6th edition, you're going to be able to play this almost straight away without any looking at this at all, because it's more or less identical. There is very, very little difference in the way the core rules work. I've looked at sort of special rules, things like there are very, very few changes. So bearing that in mind, what are the key changes that are worth knowing about? And this won't come as much of a surprise to most of you, because most of you will have seen the rumours probably, and probably the big thing that I'll cover first of all is the psychic phase, and the psychic phase is where things really have changed. The way that psychic powers work now is completely different, and the easiest way to explain it, for those of you who play fantasy, is it is more or less exactly the same as the fantasy magic phase works. There is more or less no difference in it whatsoever. So in a nutshell, for your levels of psychic ability you get dice. Those dice go in a pool, which allows you to manifest your powers, i.e. if you've got four dice, because you've got whatever it may be, however many psychers, that gives you the ability to cast that amount of psychic powers, i.e. the more psychic levels that you've got in your army, the more ability to cast more psychic powers. The Deny the Witch very much works in a similar vein, the fact that your opponent will also generate as well. They will then be able to use those generated dice to deny the witch. You will still get a basic Deny the Witch as before, but you get modifiers which will allow you to deny the witch easier with additional psychers there in your army. Quite a nice little thing is we can now even deny the witch for things that are cast on sort of buffs and bonuses that are cast on yourselves. So i.e. if you've got your opponent that's trying to buff themselves, you have, by using your dice, you have the option to actually to stop them benefiting themselves, which is pretty cool, because that will kind of stop certain armies from sort of really kind of buffing themselves out. You'll be able to put a bit of a spanner in the works. You've got also within the psychic bit, there is a new table for if you go perils. So, and that I'm not going to go into too detail because otherwise we'd be here forever, but that basically will then give you various different consequences of if you peril. So it could be as bad as you're lost to the warp, or it could be as I think there's one that is actually a bonus one. So there's one that actually gives you a benefit if you roll a 6. I can't remember off the top of my head what it does, but generally you probably lose a wound through most of them, but actually some of them can be worse than others. So that's quite a nice little added mechanic to the game, which I quite like. We also, within the psychic phase, we've got a new psychic power. It's a demonology psychic set of powers, but there's kind of one that's good and one that's bad. So you've got one that's very much about kind of summoning demons from the wall, and then you've got the other one that's about kind of banishing them away. And so one's very much based around the actual demons themselves, and one's based around kind of Grey Knights being the core army that use them, but the nice thing about them, with the exception of Tyranids, boo-hoo-hoo, every army can use these 2 new psychic powers, two new psychic sets, and they look quite fun. They look like they're massively powerful, but they have a lot of risk involved to them. So, i.e., when you're looking at the demon set, you can summon demons. So if you're a level 3, you have a possibility, by sacrificing the Psyker itself, of actually summoning a greater demon, so a bloodthirster or whatever it might be. So you can actually do that, which is crazy powerful. And then you've got a lot of, there's a one for the good side, where the Grey Knights can actually use a D weapon. So there's a D blast, which is their most powerful one. How cool is that, to have a D striking psychic power? That's pretty amazing. But where the catch is, if you're not either a demon or a Grey Knight using these 2 sets of psychic powers, they cause perils on all doubles. So there's a massive amount of risk there. So they're really cool powers, but actually they're a little bit of a gamble. You use them and it goes wrong, and then things could go wrong pretty quickly. But that's cool, because it's great to have sort of no risk, no reward, as they say. So that's psychic powers. So I could probably go over psychic powers, shaky cam, sorry. Psychic powers for ages, because there's a lot in there, and it's gonna really kind of shake up that side of the game. My initial thoughts on it is, if you're a Tzeentch player like I am, and it's probably my second army after Tyranids, wow, happy days. We are seriously powerful. It makes us phenomenal, as far as nobody is going to be able to play with the amount of dice that we've got. So that's great, that's really cool. And it just means as well that other armies that are non-psychic based are going to struggle a little bit with this phase, because there's going to be a lot of shenanigans going on. So that's psychic powers. Now let's see if I can bring up something interesting that I want to go on to next. Right, so what I want to cover next is units, and specifically, if I can find them, not particularly prepared, sorry guys. Right, let's scan away through these. Right, flying monstrous creatures. Flying monstrous creatures. Right, a love of mine, as most of you will be aware, as you can pretty much see from my desk. Flying monstrous creatures everywhere. Right, so yeah, flying monstrous creatures are a big deal for me. I love the way they worked in Sith. They were a key strategy of how I would do well in games, because their speed, their hardness to be dealt with, and their ability to get in there quickly it's been pretty awesome. Now there's been one massive, well, two big changes. One that's quite heavily publicised, and that's the one that is a massive buff, and there's one that's a bit of a nerf, and it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit. So first of all, let's cover the buff. Now, before, every time you shot at a monstrous creature and you managed to hit it, at the end of that unit hitting them, you would then have to take a grounding test, and that grounding test could obviously cause you to, one, be on the ground and then be able to be hit easier, but also losing a wound and all sorts. Now, in the new edition, you only take a grounding test for a start if you are wounded. So if you have taken an unsaved wound, which is cool, because that means, for instance, if you've got something like, I don't know, Fate Weaver, who's basically invincible at one stage, he's never going to take a wound, so he's never going to need to take a grounding test, which makes him phenomenally powerful. It also means that certain things like a Hive Tyrant that actually can be fairly fragile, they're only going to take that one grounding test once a turn, which is pretty cool. So that's great. The downside of this is, whereas before you used to be able to change your flight mode at the beginning of your turn, so you could fly, so you could go in swooping mode for a turn, fly into the danger zone, next turn you drop into gliding, and then you could charge something. That was kind of your strategy for particularly, and this is why I put these two guys sort of up in the first still. You used to be able to then drop them down and charge, and that was a great tactic because you only had to kind of deal with the fire for one turn, and then you had the ability to get your heavily aggressive unit into combat ASAP. Now, if you change your mode, you can't then charge that turn. I really dislike this. This is one of the first things that made me go, oh, that's a real shame, because it just puts the emphasis on shooting away from combat. So i.e. this bloodthirster, he has flown forward for his first turn. He knows that second turn he can then drop to the ground and then charge the opponent. Well, now he's going to fly forward the first turn. Second turn he has a dilemma, because if he's not got shot at and he's not been grounded by an enemy, he's in the air. What does he do? Does he drop to the floor? If he drops to the floor, he then has got to deal with the full force of shooting for a turn before he can charge, i.e. he's going to get blown away, because everyone's going to know the danger that he's going to pose once he actually gets in combat. So that's a real kind of shame, because it just again means that Khorne and my close combat tyrants are seriously not a viable competitive option, because they're just not going to get in combat, because they're going to get shot to pieces, because they've got to last all the shooting when they come down, but then they've got to last it again when they go Overwatch. So yeah, not happy about that at all, but there we go. For more shooty styles of flying monstrous creature, it's all benefit. There is no downside to it. So majority of the time I'm playing Tzeentch and I'm playing my Devourer tyrants. They've only really benefited. It doesn't worry me too much. And actually the great thing is the opponents have got a danger, because if they kind of go, well, I'm going to shoot them down, then they shoot them down, they've changed flight mode in their turn, not your turn, so then you can charge them. So you got double whammy with a shooting one. But with a combat style flying monstrous creature, things are not very versatile, and that's a real shame. Right, okay, so the last thing I wanted to cover with flying monstrous creatures is the Vector Strike. So Vector Strike was the other probably big change. The Vector Strike before was flew over, and it was D3 plus 1 Vector Strikes, and that was AP3, ignores cover. Not everybody knew it was ignore cover because it was FAQ, but anyway, it was ignored cover. That's changed. It's now only one hit, just one. It is AP2. So that's pretty cool. I quite like that, because it's AP2. It means that on a vehicle, particularly a strong monstrous creature, flying monstrous creature, particularly sort of my super heavy, so on my Harridan and my big Lord of Change, they're phenomenally powerful in that way, because obviously that one is going to be even more frightening. But generally, that one hit is a bit of a nerf. I mean, for instance, the Hive Chrome. Fantastic, having a nice strength 8 Vector Strike, but actually now one hit, not so great. The little exception of that rule is actually if they are Vector Striking another flying monstrous creature or a flyer, which kind of makes sense, and then it's D3. So that's cool, you know, that's good. So I suppose that's the intention of the rule, and they've still got that, which is cool. Well, I like that. So, but yeah, overall, flying monstrous creatures, just because of the fact that they're not going to get grounded very easily, they probably, I would say, in all, got a little bit better, and particularly shooty ones got a lot better. So, how long have we been going? Well, so we've already been going 17 minutes, and I've only covered a couple of things. This is going to be a long video, guys. Right, so what I'll go on to next, let's change direction slightly. Didn't want that. Okay, I'm not even going to show you the still of it because I can't be bothered to find it. But basically, we'll talk a little bit about vehicles, because vehicles was another one of the fairly substantial changes. Vehicles got a lot harder to get rid of. Now, a 6 is not good enough to explode a vehicle. You'll need a 7. So, your standard weapons that are strength, that are any strength, that are not AP 1 or 2, will never be able to explode a vehicle. How do I feel about that? Not too worried, really. I think glancing's easy enough. That hasn't really changed. So glancing a vehicle to death will not be too difficult. So it's not a massive big deal, but it does make your expensive vehicles, i.e. Land Raiders and things like that, a little bit harder to just pop, which is cool because they're expensive units, some of these to get, and I never like it, particularly when, unless I'm playing an absolute idiot, I never particularly like it when first turn I manage to just pop something that costs 300-400 points with one lucky pot shot. It seems a little bit wrong, and I think it dissuaded a few people in the last edition to spend a lot of points on expensive vehicles that weren't super heavies, because you had that chance of it just going pop straight away, particularly with D. So they've got a lot bit better. Talking of D, let's go on to D next. So D. Right, well, D. The thing that was killing the game because of escalation was D. Now D has been tamed right down, which is pretty cool. D now you get invulnerable saves and you get cover saves from, which is the way it should be. The only thing you don't get it is if they roll a 6 and you won't get your invuln saves, which is right, because that makes sense. That's a devastating hit, and that a 6 should do the trick. But actually now what it's going to mean is your Revenant Titan, you won't see them competitively at all in a small pointed game, because it's not worth it. Too many points in something that's not guaranteed to be removing things left, right and centre, and that's very much killable, which is cool because it means super heavies are still a viable part of the game. They're now in the main rulebook. There's no extra expansion to it. They're a standard part of the game that we've all got to live with and get on with. But D is not so frightening anymore. It's still good, it's still powerful, but it is not ridiculously overpowered, which I think is fantastic because it just means the game's balanced out that little bit. Everything now is a little bit more fair game. Nothing is too stupidly ridiculous. So that's cool. Okay, now I'm running out of time on my cam, so I'm just going to jot away, get rid of a few bits of rubbish, and I'll be right back. Right, I'm back. So, what do we want to talk about now? So, let's have a look. I think what we want to have a little bit of talk about now is the core way of building your army. And again, something that's been heavily publicised through the rumours for the last few weeks, stroke months. They have dramatically changed the way you can choose your army. So before we had a full organisation chart which allowed us to select certain units from certain parts of our army listing, i.e. a couple of HQ, 2 or more troops, so on. That's changed. That's changed quite dramatically. Yes, you can still use that format, and that is called Battleforged, and that has changed as well, but I'll go back to that in a second. But now you have a secondary option, which is Unbound. Now Unbound just means you take what the hell you like. As long as it's a legal unit, you just take it. As long as it goes to your points you're playing, you just take it. So take whatever you want. So you want to take an army of Bloodthirsters, you take an army of Bloodthirsters. You want to take just 2 super heavies, you take 2 super heavies. You take whatever you want. Now, it does mean that you are stuck with not potentially being able to claim any objectives, being able to do much in the game, but it does mean now legally you can just literally, I fancy taking that, I'm going to take that. You know, if you want to just take hundreds and hundreds of troops, just take hundreds and hundreds of troops. You take whatever you like, which is really cool because it's fun, and it actually means the minute I thought about it was, you can take this in 2 ways. You can take it in a heavily competitive way, and many would probably say, well, that's the way that I would expect to be taking it. Well, no. Yeah, I do play competitive a lot of the time, but from a forging the narrative stroke fun way of playing the game, what better way to play a game than actually phone up your mate and say, look, I've just fancied a real laugh today. How about I'm going to bring like this ridiculous army list, and let's just see whether you can survive it. Whether you can survive it. If you survive it, you win. Otherwise, I'll win if I can table you. Something like that. You know, you can make lots of real kind of cinematic last stand scenarios, and I actually think that was really the fault when GW came up with this. I think it's a really cool idea. It does mean you can just do what the hell you want. You can make it as fun as you like, and why not? We've all got these cool models. Let's just put them on the table, have fun with them. Doesn't mean you have to get crazily competitive, doesn't mean you have to be thinking of the most disgusting, dirtiest thing. Yeah, which I will in time. But it's not about that, it's just about having fun, and that's what this game is all about. And actually, if you communicate with your opponent, you let them know what you're doing, you talk about it together, have a laugh about it, then why the hell not? It sounds a great way of playing the game. But if you go with your Battleforged list, there's certain benefits. The biggest benefit of it is all your troops become, all your units are able to capture objectives, and your troops become, I can't remember what the name of it is now, they can secure objectives, and unless there's another troop with the same rule, no other unit can contest that objective, so that makes them quite powerful. If you watch my videos and you see my Tyrannid videos on the formations, the Gargoyle Skyblight formation had that rule, which is very cool and massively powerful, but it's been balanced a little bit by the fact that everything can pretty much take it now. But that's cool, so it means that you get a huge benefit if you take a Battleforged list, which is nice. What you can also do now with Battleforged list is you can take as many attachments as you want. So you don't just have to take just one ally, you can take as many as you want. You can take as many formations as you want, you do whatever you like. So you can actually put together pretty nasty Battleforged lists, because you can have, like for instance for me, Hive Tyrants. As long as I have a troop choice with my Hive Tyrant, I can take multiple Hive Tyrants in a Battleforged list, because I can just keep opening up new detachments, which I think is fantastic as well, which is a really cool little rule. So there's going to be some very frightening combinations out there just in Battleforged lists because of what you can do with that. The other thing that you can do with the allied chart now is some of the allies have changed. Let's just see whether I can find. Probably I won't be able to find it, but let's see maybe whether I can find it. I reckon I can, guys. Let's find it. Where are you? Or am I not going to be able to find it? Yes, I am. Right, okay. So the Allies matrix there, it has changed, and I'm not going to go through it all now, but there's a few sort of cheesy ones in there that I think they kind of got rid of a little bit, and there's some that probably got worse. But yeah, there's been some messing around with that and making it a little bit different, which is cool. Always nice to have little changes. And the big one for me, the Come the Apocalypse ally part has changed. So whereas before, us Tyrannids, we just couldn't ally with anyone at all, no matter what, we could never ally with them, which made sense fluff wise. I mean, Tyrannids wouldn't, but they've changed it. So basically come the apocalypse, you can now ally with whoever you want. But you do have to deploy 12 inches away from them, and if you get within 6 of them, you have to roll to see whether you basically do nothing, because they've got the one eyes open rule, which was from the old edition. It just means basically they're wary of the allies. But actually that's pretty cool, because it just means, again, if you want to be a bit funny, you want to try something different, you can ally with whoever you want. So my immediate thoughts is we can again do the Genestealer cults, because you can ally Tyranids with Imperial Guard, and that brings all them possibilities back. So I can see some really cool looking cult Genestealers coming back, which would be cool. I love that. So that's that. Trying to think whether I want to cover anything else. The last thing I'll cover is there is a new set of missions, and these missions are pretty complicated, but basically we have 2 charts now. So we have the same old ones which haven't changed, and we have a new set. The new set are a really funky idea, and I've seen this done on local tournaments before, so people won't be too unfamiliar with them. But these set of missions, they allow you to have strategic or tactical objectives within the missions. These tactical objectives are random generated objectives, which, if you can control them at the end of the turn and do certain things, i.e. one might be as many challenges as you can in one turn, whatever it may be, you can gain additional victory points from doing those set little tasks, which is a nice factor. I like that, and it's nice that we've still got the 2. So if we want to keep it simple, we can stick to the tried and tested ones we already know. If we want to get a little bit exciting on it, we can go with the new ones, which is a nice factor. I like that. How that will factor into a competition, I don't know, but we'll have to see. But anyway, guys, that is now probably a good best part of half an hour I've been wittering on about the new edition. Hopefully it's been useful. My overriding thoughts on the new edition to start off with is I think it's good. I'm happy with it. I'm not unhappy massively with anything, probably apart from the flying monstrous creatures. Everything else I'm pretty satisfied with. I think it's definitely going to take people a lot of time to adjust to the new style of building a list. That's probably going to be the biggest factor. And I think the new psychic phase is going to be a refreshing new addition to the game. So all in all, I really like it. I'm looking forward to my first game, which I believe will be next weekend, and either I'll get a back rep of that, or I'll give you a little bit of feedback after that. Once I've digested the rules a little bit further, I will break them down into more Tyranid based tactical style, so we can digest them and work out what works well for us. And I'm still hoping for a fairly decent FAQ, which I believe is in the balance, which should make our Shadow in the Warp pretty damn impressive, because currently it doesn't really work in the new rules. So I'll leave you with that thought. If you can think, all you Tyranid players, of how they might work that one out, please put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, guys, thanks very much for watching. Cheers for your support. Please do comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.